If you are investing while your life can be destroyed by one surprise bill, you didn't start building wealth. You skipped step one. And that is why so many people feel like they are doing everything right, but still never feel safe. They invest, they budget, they watch finance videos, they open the apps, they talk about index funds, crypto, dividends, real estate, side hustles. But the second life hits them in the face, everything collapses. Because they built the exciting part first, not the foundation. That is the mistake. Most people skip the first financial move. And the brutal part, the move is not complicated. It is not glamorous. It is not some secret rich person strategy. It is not a stock pick. It is not a side hustle. It is not learning how to make your money work for you. The first move is much more boring than that. You make yourself hard to break. That's it. Before you try to get rich, you have to stop being fragile, because fragile people do not build wealth. They interrupt it. They sell when life gets messy. They borrow when something breaks. They panic when hours get cut. They use credit cards to survive things that should have been annoying, not financially fatal. And that is the difference. A strong financial life can take a hit. A fragile one turns every small problem into a full emergency. Car repair? Emergency. Medical bill? Emergency. Lost phone? Emergency. Rent increase? Emergency. One bad week? Disaster. And when every small hit becomes a crisis, your money never gets the chance to grow. It keeps getting dragged back into survival mode. That is why step one matters. Not because it makes you rich, because it stops life from resetting you. And for most people, the real reason they never build momentum with money is not that they are lazy. It is not that they are stupid. It is not that they didn't find the perfect investment. It is because every few months, life hits them and they go back to zero. Again and again and again. That is the loop. And the first financial move is how you break it. So what is step one? Step one is building a real cash buffer, not money I might spend later, not money sitting there until I find something better, not money I'll invest once I feel confident. A real buffer, money with one job, protect me from chaos. That's it. It is not supposed to be exciting. It is not supposed to impress your friends. It is not supposed to beat the market. It is supposed to be there when life gets ugly, on time, with no drama, with no panic. That is the whole job. And somehow this is the step people skip the most, because everyone wants the next level. They want growth. They want investing. They want freedom. They want the nice lifestyle. They want the story, but they don't want the boring base. And that is like building a glass house on wet cardboard and then acting shocked when it falls apart. History keeps showing this. In 2008, a lot of people were not destroyed because they had zero income. They were destroyed because they had no room, too much debt, too many payments, too many assumptions, not enough cash, not enough flexibility. Then in 2020, the market dropped about 34% in roughly a month. And suddenly people learned the difference between I am investing for the long term and I need this money by Friday. Those are not the same thing. If you need the money soon, it was never investing money. It was protection money wearing the wrong outfit. And the market does not care that your emergency came at the wrong time. The market does not pause because your car broke. It does not care that rent is due. It does not care that you need the money now. That is why step one comes first. Because before your money can grow, your life needs a floor. A floor stops you from falling, and most people are trying to decorate the second floor while the first floor is still missing. They want to invest. They want to optimize. They want to build wealth. But they are one surprise away from swiping a credit card and praying. That is not wealth building. That is pretending. Now let's make this painfully practical. Imagine two people. Person A starts investing immediately. They put money into the market. They feel smart. They feel productive. They finally feel like they are doing the adult thing. But they have no emergency fund. They have a credit card balance. They have high monthly bills. And if one thing goes wrong, they are cooked. Person B looks slower. They build a cash buffer first. They pay down toxic debt. They make their monthly life less fragile. Then they start investing. Who looks more advanced in the first month? Person A, who is more likely to actually stay in the game for years? Person B, and that is what people miss. Wealth is not built by who looks smart first. It is built by who stays consistent longs. And consistency is almost impossible when your life is fragile, because fragile lives force interruptions, and interrupted money does not compound. That sentence is important. Interrupted money does not compound. If you invest, then pull it out. Invest, then stop. Invest, then panic. Invest, then use the money for an emergency. You are not really compounding. You are restarting. And restarting is why people feel like they never get anywhere. The first financial move fixes that. It creates space between you and chaos. That space is where progress starts. Now, people hear emergency fund and they immediately get bored. They think, yeah, I know. But knowing is not the same as doing. And having $200 floating in your account is not the same as having a real buffer. A real buffer should match your actual life. If your essential expenses are $2,000 a month, then 1 month is $2,000. 3 months is $6,000. 6 months is $12,000. If your expenses are $4,000, then the numbers are bigger. That is why random internet advice feels incomplete, because stability is personal. Your buffer depends on your life, your rent, your job stability, your health, your family situation, your responsibilities, your risk, but the idea is universal. You need money that is not trying to be impressive. Money that just stands there like a financial bodyguard. That is what most people skip. They don't build the bodyguard. Then they wonder why every problem gets inside the house. And here is where people get confused. They say, but if my money sits in cash, isn't inflation eating it? Yes, a little. But listen carefully. Your emergency fund is not there to make you rich. It is there to stop you from becoming desperate. Different job. If you try to make every dollar grow, you will eventually give the wrong dollars too much risk. And that is where beginners get wrecked. Because protection money is not supposed to act like growth money. Protection money protects. Growth money grows. When you mix those jobs, you create chaos. This is why a high-yield savings account makes sense for this kind of money. Not because it is exciting, because it is stable, accessible, and boring. And boring is exactly what protection money should be. Now, step one is not only cash. Cash is the first part. But the deeper move is this: reduce fragility. That means looking at anything that can break your life fast. High interest debt, huge fixed costs, no buffer, unstable income, subscriptions you forgot about, payments you barely think about, a lifestyle that requires everything to go perfectly. That is fragility. And the first financial move is to attack fragility before chasing growth. Because growth on top of fragility is weak. It looks good until pressure arrives, then it breaks. So if you have credit card debt at 24% and you are trying to invest for an 8% return, you are not being strategic. You are fighting a fire with a water pistol while gasoline is still leaking under the door. Kill the leak, then build. If your car payment is eating your paycheck, your first move may not be investing more. It may be lowering the monthly pressure. If rent is too high for your income, your first move may not be a new brokerage account. It may be creating room, because room is power. Room lets you think. Room lets you wait. Room lets you choose. Room lets you say no. And most people don't need more financial noise. They need more room. That is what step one gives you. Not riches. Room. And room is the beginning of everything. Now let's talk about why people skip it. They skip it because step one feels invisible. Nobody praises you for not collapsing. Nobody claps when you don't use a credit card. Nobody sees your emergency fund sitting quietly. Nobody says, wow, your life has a strong foundation. But they do see the new car. They do see the trip. They do see the apartment. They do see the lifestyle. That is why people skip the foundation. Visible progress feels better than invisible strength. But invisible strength is what actually saves you. The problem is that humans love signals. We want signs that we are moving up. A better phone, a better car, a better place, better clothes, better dinners, better weekends. But most of those signals make your life more expensive. The first financial move does the opposite. It makes your life stronger. And stronger is better than flashier. Every time. Because flashy without strength is just a costume. And a lot of people are wearing expensive costumes over financial panic. Now, to be fair, not everyone skips step one because they are careless. Some people are genuinely squeezed. Rent is high. Food is expensive. Insurance is insane. Wages do not always keep up. Life is not a spreadsheet. So this is not a lecture where I pretend everyone can magically save thousands overnight. That would be ridiculous. But even if the process is slow, the order still matters. The goal is not perfection. The goal is direction. Even a small buffer changes behavior. $500 changes how you handle a small problem. $1,000 changes how you handle a surprise. 1 month of expenses changes how you think. 3 months changes how you breathe. 6 months changes how you make decisions. That is the progression. And every step makes you less breakable. That is why this matters. Because most people are not one genius move away from wealth. They are one solid foundation away from finally keeping progress. So what should you actually do? First, separate your protection money from your spending money. Do not keep your emergency fund sitting in the same account where you buy food, clothes, and random nonsense at midnight. That money needs a wall around it. Second, decide what counts as an emergency before the emergency happens. Car repair that keeps you working? Emergency. Medical bill? Emergency. Rent gap after income disruption? Emergency. Random vacation? Not emergency. New phone because yours feels old? Not emergency. Feeling sad and wanting to buy furniture? Emotionally understandable. Still not emergency. Third, build the first layer as fast as realistically possible. Maybe that is $500, maybe $1,000, maybe 1 month of expenses. The exact number depends on your life, but the first goal is the same. Stop every small surprise from becoming debt. Fourth, once the first buffer exists, attack the biggest fragility. For many people, that is high interest debt. For others, it is a monthly payment. For others, it is unstable income. For others, it is just spending chaos. Find the weakest part of the system and strengthen it. That is step one. Not just saving, strengthening. That is the mindset shift. Because if you only think, I need to save money, it feels boring. But if you think, I am making my life harder to break, suddenly the move has power. And that is what most people miss. The first financial move is not about becoming rich. It is about becoming stable enough to build wealth later. That is the order. Survive, stabilize, grow. Not grow and pray. Not invest and hope. Not upgrade and pretend. Survive, stabilize, grow. And once you do that, everything after becomes easier. Investing becomes easier because you can leave the money alone. Budgeting becomes easier because emergencies stop destroying everything. Debt payoff becomes easier because you stop adding new debt every time life happens. Confidence becomes easier because you know you can take a hit. That is what step one does. It changes your relationship with money from panic to control. And control is where wealth starts. So here's the final thought. If you feel like you keep trying with money but never actually move forward, you may not need a more advanced strategy. You may need the step you skipped, the boring one, the invisible one, the one that does not look impressive online. Build the floor, make yourself harder to break, because if your foundation is weak, every financial plan becomes fragile. But once the foundation is strong, even simple money moves start working. That is why step one matters, and skipping it can cost you years. Subscribe for more simple, animated finance videos.